Hello there, internets. So good to see you. Isn't it just another lovely day? Why, yes it is. And what does this day have to store for you? Hopefully it's maybe the end of something old and the beginning of something new in a good way. And how can you make sure that it will be a good way? Well, I guess these things all depend on perspective, context, whatever you want to call it. Since it obviously is not always the case that good things happen to good people, plenty of bad things happen to good people too. Plenty of goldfish swim in the pool. Some of them are short, some of them are long. Where do they come from? Where do they go? Where do they swim to? Somebody knows. Usually it's the goldfish that know. Right, goldfish? I'm not even in the water with them yet they swim away. Where they have a instinctual sense of fight or flight. And as they're goldfish, when it comes to a large person walking and a full-size human that they would consider large, flight seems like the most logical solution. Or it's not a response to that at all. Yet every time I approach them, or anybody else, they swim away. Look at those lovely blue marbled ones. Aren't they lovely? Aren't they lovely? Yes, they are. Got red and blue marbled ones. Got blue and blue marbled ones. All the marbled ones. Aren't they just lovely? The goldfish of the swimming pond. Right. And they have little lily pads here, and sometimes there may or may not be a frog here. But there sure are a bunch of goldfish here. Are there not? Oh yes, there are. Not bad for a small pond. Which begs the question, would you rather be small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond? On the one hand, big fish in a small pond probably eats fairly well, right? Until it's time for him to be eaten. Because it's easy to catch him, since it's so easy to spot him. And a small fish in a big pond, well, he may live a life of danger, yet he may survive longer, as long as he does survive, because people will not usually look for the small fish in a big pond. They usually look for the big fish. So, it's all a matter of perspective and context. Which goes back right into what I was saying about how do you make sure that if your day is beginning a new thing, that you make it a good thing. Well, that too is a matter of perspective and context, and putting that power in your hands and making sure that you make the most of the opportunity that you get at the start of every day. And it may all sound very much like Yoda blabber to some, not so very deep thoughts. Right? Well, I would argue that actually it is really the maybe not so deep thoughts that matter in many ways. Yes, deep philosophy also matters. But half deep also matters. Because that is where people spend an inordinate amount of time in their thoughts and in their actions. So it seems highly relevant to think about these semi-deep thoughts, since they tend to affect the vast majority of people, including many who spend most of their time or much of their time in thinking about very deep thoughts. Even they have to come up for air sometimes. And along the way, they'll spend their time in semi-deep thoughts. And then not deep thoughts. And when they're in the shallows and they can stand up and breathe, well, they might have an epiphany. And it might be sprinkled with a dash of a semi-deep thought as it relates to their very deep thought. Now you might say, Yasha, you're just spinning here. You're just grasping at straws, looking for a thing to say. Well, that may be your opinion. It happens to not be correct, in my opinion, because I am doing this with purpose. What is my purpose in this video? As I said from the beginning, is to say ways to make sure that as you start your day, you can make the most of it. You make it in a good way. And as I said, one of those ways is to spend your time in the semi-deep thoughts. And some of which I've mentioned. Right? So you can say what you like about it. One thing is for sure. As the time rolls on, and it does, you will certainly see the benefit of putting your thoughts into action, whether they be semi-deep or very deep or not deep at all. Doing the do, as it were. The same as you do when you do the do you do. And that way, you can spend the time you want to do the do you like to do. Not just to do the do you must do. Sometimes those two overlap. But very often they don't. And you should find, if you are so fortunate, a way to have that overlap be as much as possible. For when you do, joyousness shall be the rule of the day. Joy and happiness. With joy and happiness comes much fun-sponsibility. What is fun-sponsibility? Well, as anyone who's ever been fun-sponsible will tell you, it is responsibility of having fun, which is not to be taken for granted, since it is so very precious. Fun and the having of the fun. These are important things in life. As important as the greening of the plants by the sun, the growing of the plants by the sunlight that feeds the plants, that lets them grow bigger and greener and brighter or darker. If your January day is warm or cold, and you're not necessarily looking for poetry, however, you are listening and looking and searching for things that may help you attain goals better, faster, or more efficaciously. Well, it should come as no surprise. What we see in these wondrous days, these historic times, is that they're always historic times. And these are always historic days. It doesn't matter when you are alive. It matters that you are alive. It doesn't matter necessarily how you do. It matters that you do. Now you can say, well, it does matter how you do. Yes, on technical levels, it may indeed matter how you do. And you may say, well, but it does matter when you are alive, because if you are alive at certain times, you will be around for certain events. Well, I will say, as long as there's life teeming on a planet, there are always events of note. In fact, I challenge you to find any 20-year period in human history where there are not events of note. And now you may say to me, well, how could you know? If you go back thousands of years, there are whole stretches of time between notable events. No, there aren't. There are merely periods of time in which we have lost track, maybe, of events that may have been notable. But there were not 20-year periods in human history, in any region, in any tribe, frankly, where there were not significant events. Because what is significant? Significant matters very much in terms of context. So what is significant to you may not be significant to someone else at all. What is significant to a member of one tribe may not have any meaning at all to a member of the next tribe. In fact, before widespread communications were common, that's pretty much how it was. Before newspapers, before radio, before TV, all that stuff, telephones, word of mouth is how things spread, and letters and books. But even just word of mouth could take weeks to spread word around a country, months to spread around a continent, years to spread around the known world. And by the way, so is it today. Even though we have instant communications, you will still find, and I remember this as a kid growing up, in this lifetime, that certain things that would take place, let's say in America, in pop culture, be it movies or theater or radio, or music people listen to, whatever it might be, fashion, things that happened in the States would happen in certain other countries a few months later, certain other countries a few months later after that, certain countries about a year after, and certain other countries 2 or 3 years or even 4 years after, and in other countries even more. Now you can say, well, the internet has closed that gap. I would say, no, it hasn't. That gap still exists very much. You can hear it very commonly on what people are listening to on radio. What is their pop culture? What is their main dish du jour? Whether it's reading things, watching things, listening to things, participating in society, what they wear, the foods they tend to eat, the diets they tend to trend with, etc. These are all things that you can measure and watch and observe. And you can see very clearly there are still gaps between the societies in terms of how long it takes one particular cultural reference to spread to other cultures. Yes, you have instant communications, and when certain events happen, they spread relatively quickly, within minutes, hours, or days. But there's certainly plenty of events that take far longer to spread when they're less quote-unquote significant or earth-shattering, right? Fashions, or what sodas are popular in one place or another, and what foods are popular, whatever it might be, whatever books are in trend, because after you get the original version, then it needs to be translated to other versions, etc. Happens all the time. Film, TV, radio, internet shows, whatever it might be. So, again, yes, there is a much greater sense of everything being much closer in terms of time, in terms of events, and that's true. At the same time, there are still plenty of events that take a while to spread, and therefore demonstrably show that culture is not yet all one. And frankly, that's a good thing. May culture always be diverse, for that is a strength of humanity, that we have diversity of culture and diversity of thought and diversity of actions. That is a strength, not a weakness. The sooner we embrace that, the better. I think on the whole people do embrace that, but there are of course some who will not. And that's fine as long as they're acting peacefully. So now we have another day and another opportunity to make things great. Happy.